You dare speak of honor, Your Grace, when families are starving because of your greed? The ballroom went silent. Every eye turned to the young woman in the faded silk gown, her chin raised, her voice cutting through the glittering crowd like a blade. Duke Adrian Blackthorne stared at her, this nobody, this girl with nothing, who had just destroyed her own future with a single sentence. What she didn't know was that her words would ignite a war that would nearly kill her, a war that would force a duke to choose between power and truth. This is their story. Stay until the end, like, comment, and tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey goes. The Whitcombe estate wasn't much anymore. 3 rooms that still had decent wallpaper, a library with more empty shelves than books, a dining table that seated 12 but only ever held 2 place settings now, Elara's and her mother's. Elara sat at that table on a Tuesday morning, staring at the letter in her hand. The paper was expensive, heavy, the kind that announced importance before you even broke the seal. Her mother hovered near the window, wringing her hands. "Well?" Margaret Whitcomb's voice was thin, like something stretched too far. "What does it say?" Elara read it twice, then a third time, just to make sure the words hadn't rearranged themselves into something less terrible. "We have 2 months," she said finally. 2 months until what? Until they take the house. The silence that followed was the kind that pressed against your ribs. Margaret sank into the chair across from her, all the air gone from her lungs. "There must be something we can do," she whispered. "Someone we can ask. We've asked everyone." Elara set the letter down carefully, like it might bite. "Twice. Your father's brother hasn't answered our letters in 6 months. The Harrisons are bankrupt themselves." Margaret's hands fluttered to her face. Elara watched her mother crumble and felt that familiar tightness in her chest, the one that made her want to scream or throw something or just run until her lungs gave out. But she didn't. She never did. "There's the Ashford ball tomorrow night," Margaret said suddenly, grasping at straws. "If we could just attend, if you could just speak to the right people, Mother. A suitable match would solve everything. You're still young, still pretty. We can't afford new gloves, let alone a ball gown that would impress anyone worth impressing. You have the blue silk from 3 seasons ago, with the torn hem and the stain on the bodice that won't come out no matter how many times Mary scrubs it." Margaret flinched like she'd been slapped. Elara closed her eyes. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" "No, you're right." Her mother's voice had gone flat. "You're absolutely right. We're ruined, and I'm asking you to pretend we're not." The worst part was that Elara would go to the ball. She would wear the blue silk with its fading color and obvious repairs. She would smile and dance and pretend that everything was fine, because that's what you did when the alternative was giving up entirely. And maybe, just maybe, something would change. The Ashford estate blazed with light. Elara stood at the bottom of the marble steps, watching carriages roll up one after another, disgorging ladies in jewel-toned gowns and men in perfectly tailored evening coats. The air smelled like expensive perfume and fresh flowers and money. So much money. "Ready?" Margaret squeezed her arm. No, Elara thought, but she nodded anyway. The ballroom was a different world. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across polished floors. Musicians played something elegant and forgettable. Women clustered in corners, whispering behind fans. Men stood in groups, discussing politics and property with the casual arrogance of people who'd never worried about either. Elara felt eyes on her the moment she entered. Not admiring eyes. Assessing ones. "Is that the Whitcombe girl? I heard they're selling everything. Desperate, probably. Looking for a husband with deep pockets." The whispers weren't even subtle. Margaret's grip tightened. "Ignore them." Elara smiled, the practiced, empty smile she'd perfected over the last year, and moved deeper into the room. She made it about 15 minutes before Lord Ashford's nephew cornered her near the refreshment table. "Miss Whitcombe." Jeremy Ashford had the kind of smile that looked friendly until you noticed his eyes. "You look well." The pause before "well" said everything. "Thank you, Lord Ashford." She kept her voice light. "You're very kind. I hear your family has fallen on difficult times." There it was, the thing everyone was thinking, but most were too polite to say directly. We're managing, Elara said. Are you? He leaned closer, dropping his voice. Because I've heard things. About debts. About desperation. Her smile didn't waver, but her fingers tightened on her glass. I'm sure you've heard all sorts of fascinating things. I could help, you know. His hand brushed her arm. If you were agreeable. She understood perfectly. The suggestion wasn't subtle. It wasn't meant to be. How generous. Elara stepped back, putting space between them. But I'm quite all right, thank you. His expression hardened. You might want to reconsider. Pride won't pay your debts, Miss Whitcombe. Neither will compromising myself for men who mistake desperation for availability. She walked away before he could respond, her heart hammering against her ribs. The problem was, he was right. Pride wouldn't pay her debts. And she was running out of options that didn't involve exactly the kind of arrangement Jeremy Ashford had just proposed. She needed air. The terrace was less crowded, just a handful of people scattered across the stone balcony, enjoying the cool night breeze. Elara found a quiet corner and pressed her palms against the railing, breathing slowly. Rough evening? She turned. The woman standing a few feet away was older, maybe 40, dressed in deep green silk that probably cost more than Elara's entire wardrobe. Her expression was amused but not unkind. Is it that obvious? Elara asked. Only to someone who's been paying attention. The woman moved closer, studying her with sharp eyes. You're the Whitcombe girl, the one everyone's whispering about. I suppose I am. They're vultures, most of them, circling because they smell blood. Elara's laugh was bitter. That's a cheerful assessment. But accurate. The woman tilted her head. You know what they say about you, don't you? That you're desperate. That you'll take any offer that comes your way. I'm aware. Are you also aware that the Duke of Blackthorn is inside, holding court like the self-important peacock he is? Elara blinked at the sudden shift. What? Adrian Blackthorn. You've heard of him, I assume. Everyone had heard of Adrian Blackthorn. He was one of the wealthiest men in England, heir to a dukedom that stretched across 3 counties. He was also, by all accounts, cold, arrogant, and entirely too convinced of his own importance. I've heard of him, Elara said carefully. He's the reason half those families you're worried about are suffering. The woman's voice had gone hard. His estate managers have been raising rents, evicting tenants who can't pay, consolidating land for profit, all with his full approval, of course. Elara's stomach twisted. How do you know that? Because I've seen it. My cousin lives on one of his properties. They threw her out last month when her husband couldn't make the new rates. The woman's eyes glittered. She had 3 children under 5. They're living in a church basement now. The anger that rose in Elara's chest was sudden and fierce. She'd spent the last year swallowing her pride, biting her tongue, playing nice with people who looked down on her. And for what? So she could smile and curtsy to men who crushed families without a second thought? Why are you telling me this? Elara asked. The woman smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Because you look like someone who might actually do something about it, unlike the rest of these spineless parasites. Before Elara could respond, the woman was gone, disappearing back into the ballroom like she'd never been there at all. Elara stood there, her mind racing. She should go back inside, find her mother, smile and make small talk and pretend everything was fine. Instead, she found herself walking back into the ballroom with her jaw set and her hands curled into fists. Adrian Blackthorn was easy to spot. He stood in the center of a group of men, all of them laughing at something he'd just said. Tall, dark-haired, dressed in black evening clothes that fit him like they'd been sewn directly onto his body. He looked exactly like what he was, someone who'd never wanted for anything in his entire life. Elara hated him on sight. She crossed the room before she could talk herself out of it. Your Grace. The group fell silent. Adrian turned, his expression politely curious. Yes? Up close, he was even more infuriating. Sharp cheekbones, gray eyes that looked like they could cut glass, a mouth that had probably never smiled at anything that wasn't a mirror. I'd like a word, Elara said. His eyebrow rose. I'm sorry, have we been introduced? No, but I know who you are. One of the men snickered. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance, maybe, or amusement. Hard to tell. And you are? He asked. Elara Whitcombe. Should that name mean something to me? The dismissal was casual, practiced, like she was barely worth the effort of acknowledging. Probably not, Elara said, but the names of the families you've evicted from your properties might. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Adrian's eyes narrowed. I beg your pardon? You heard me. Elara's voice was louder now, carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom. The families you've thrown out. The people who've worked your land for generations, who can't afford the rents your managers keep raising. Do those names mean something to you? Someone gasped. The musicians had stopped playing. Adrian stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. You have no idea what you're talking about, don't I? Elara met his gaze without flinching. You claim to be a man of honor, Your Grace. You stand here in your expensive clothes, surrounded by people who hang on your every word, and you talk about duty and responsibility. But what about your responsibility to the people who depend on you? What about the families starving because you've decided profit matters more than people? His jaw tightened. You're making accusations based on what? Gossip? Rumors from people who can't manage their own affairs? I'm making accusations based on the truth. The truth? Adrian's laugh was sharp and entirely humorless. And what would you know about managing an estate? About the economics of land management? About the difficult decisions that have to be made to keep hundreds of people employed and productive? I know that throwing families into the street isn't a difficult decision, it's a cruel one. You know nothing. His voice was ice. You stand here, lecturing me about responsibility, when you can't even manage your own family's debts. Everyone in this room knows the Whitcombes are bankrupt, that you're here tonight fishing for a husband wealthy enough to save you, and you have the audacity to judge me? The words hit like a slap. Elara felt her face burn. Around them, people were whispering, staring, drinking in every word of the confrontation, like it was the best entertainment they'd had in months. At least I'm honest about my situation, she said quietly. Can you say the same? I don't owe you honesty. I don't owe you anything. Adrian looked at her like she was something he'd scraped off his shoe. You're a foolish girl with no understanding of the world, no prospects, and apparently no sense of self-preservation. You've just destroyed any chance you had of finding a respectable match. Congratulations. He turned to walk away. You're a coward. Adrian stopped. The room held its breath. He turned back slowly, his expression unreadable. What did you say? You heard me. Elara's voice shook, but she didn't look away. You hide behind your title and your wealth and your managers, and you pretend you're not responsible for the suffering you cause. That makes you a coward. For a long moment, Adrian just stared at her. Then he smiled, cold and cutting and utterly without warmth. You're right about one thing, Miss Whitcombe. You are honest, brutally, stupidly honest. He raised his voice, addressing the room. Let me be equally honest. This woman is unfit for marriage to any respectable man. She's reckless, inappropriate, and clearly incapable of basic social decorum. I suggest you all take note. The room erupted in whispers. Adrian walked away without another word. Elara stood frozen, her nails digging into her palms, her whole body trembling with rage and humiliation, and something else. Something that felt dangerously close to tears. Her mother appeared at her elbow, her face white. Elara, we need to leave. Now. Yes, Elara whispered. We do. They left through the side door, avoiding the main entrance where carriages were still arriving. Margaret didn't speak during the entire ride home. Neither did Elara. What was there to say? She'd just committed social suicide, in front of half of London's elite. For what? To make a point that no one cared about? When they got home, Elara went straight to her room and sat on the edge of her bed, staring at nothing. She'd ruined everything. Whatever slim chance she'd had of finding a suitable match, of saving her family, of keeping their home, it was gone now. Destroyed by her own stupidity and pride and inability to just keep her mouth shut. But the worst part, the part that made her want to scream, was that she didn't regret it. Because Adrian Blackthorne was exactly what she'd called him. A coward hiding behind money and privilege while people suffered, and someone needed to say it. The next morning, the gossip reached them before breakfast. Mary, their remaining maid, brought the news with wide eyes and a scandalized expression. It's all over town, miss. They're saying you insulted the Duke of Blackthorne, that you called him a coward in front of everyone. I did, Elara said flatly. They're saying you're ruined, that no respectable man will have you now. They're probably right. Mary twisted her hands in her apron. But miss, what will you do? That was the question, wasn't it? Elara didn't have an answer. The letters started arriving around noon. Most were from mothers withdrawing invitations to upcoming events. A few were from men she'd danced with at previous balls, politely but firmly declining to call on her. One was from Lord Herrick Vane. Margaret brought it to her, her hands shaking. This one is different. Elara opened it. Miss Whitcombe, I was most interested to hear about last night's events. Your courage, while perhaps misguided, is admirable. I would very much like to make your acquaintance. I will call on you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Yours, Lord Herrick Vane. He wants to call on me, Elara said slowly. Lord Vane? Margaret's face lit up. But Elara, he's one of the wealthiest men in the country. If he's interested, why would he be interested in someone who just became a social pariah? I don't know, but does it matter? This could be the answer to our prayers. Elara stared at the letter, her stomach churning with something she couldn't quite name. She'd heard of Lord Vane. Everyone had. He was rich, titled, influential. He was also nearly twice her age and had been widowed twice under circumstances that were unclear. But beggars couldn't be choosers, could they? Fine, she said. He can call. Margaret beamed. Elara felt sick. Adrian Blackthorne sat in his study, staring at the same paragraph in the same report he'd been trying to read for the last hour. He couldn't focus. Every time he tried, he saw her face. That girl, Elara Whitcombe, standing in the middle of the Ashford ballroom, calling him a coward, the audacity of it, the sheer reckless stupidity. And the worst part, the part that made him want to throw something, was that her words wouldn't leave him alone. What about your responsibility to the people who depend on you? He'd dismissed her, humiliated her, destroyed her reputation with a handful of words. So why did he feel like he'd lost that confrontation? Your Grace? Adrian looked up. His estate manager, Thomas Graves, stood in the doorway, holding another stack of papers. What is it? The quarterly reports from the Northern Properties. You asked to review them. Leave them on the desk. Thomas hesitated. There's also been some talk, Your Grace, about last night. I'm aware. The girl, Miss Whitcombe, she's created quite a stir. She's a fool, Adrian said coldly, and not my concern. Of course, Your Grace. Thomas set down the papers. Though there is one thing. About the evictions she mentioned. What about them? Some of the tenants have been vocal about the rent increases. There's been talk of petitions, complaints to the local magistrate, which they're fully entitled to submit. Adrian's tone was dismissive. If they can't afford the rents, they're welcome to seek employment elsewhere. We're not running a charity. No, Your Grace, of course not. Thomas left. Adrian picked up the quarterly reports, scanning the numbers mechanically. Profits were up. Efficiency was up. Everything was running exactly as it should. So why did he feel like something was wrong? He thought about Elara Whitcombe's eyes blazing with righteous fury, about her voice, shaking but steady, calling him out in front of everyone. You hide behind your title and your wealth. Adrian set down the reports and rubbed his temples. She was nobody, a girl from a ruined family with no prospects and no future. Why did her opinion matter? It didn't. It shouldn't. But it did. And that was the most infuriating part of all. Lord Herrick Vane arrived at exactly 2 o'clock. Elara watched from the window as his carriage pulled up, black and expensive, with the Vane coat of arms emblazoned on the door. The man who stepped out was tall, well-dressed, with silver-streaked dark hair and the kind of face that might have been handsome 20 years ago. Now it just looked hard, like stone worn smooth by time and weather. He's here, Margaret whispered, practically vibrating with excitement. Remember, be polite, smile, let him lead the conversation. Mother, I know how to speak to people. Yes, but this is important. This could save us. Elara wanted to argue, to say that she'd rather starve than marry a man old enough to be her father, a man she knew nothing about except that he'd conveniently appeared the day after she became unmarriageable. But she didn't, because her mother was right. They were out of options. Mary showed Lord Vane into the sitting room. He looked around at their shabby furniture and faded wallpaper with an expression that managed to be both pitying and calculating at the same time. Miss Whitcombe. He took her hand, his grip just a fraction too tight. How delightful to finally meet you. Lord Vane, thank you for coming. How could I resist? After hearing about your spirited performance last night. His smile didn't reach his eyes. You certainly made an impression. Elara forced herself to smile back. So I've heard. They sat. Margaret offered tea. Vane accepted with practiced charm, asking polite questions about the house, the weather, inconsequential things that felt like a test Elara wasn't sure how to pass. I must confess, he said after a few minutes of small talk, I was impressed by your courage. Most young women wouldn't dare challenge a duke in public. Most young women have something to lose. He laughed. True, but you have something else. Spirit, fire. I find that appealing. The way he said appealing made Elara's skin crawl. You're very kind, she said carefully. I'm practical. Vane set down his teacup. Let me be frank, Miss Whitcombe. I know about your family's situation. The debts, the threats of foreclosure. It must be very stressful. Margaret's face went pale. Elara's hands tightened in her lap. We're managing, she said. Are you? His eyes were sharp. Because I've heard differently. I've heard you have perhaps 2 months before you lose everything. Elara's throat tightened. I don't see how that's any of your concern. It isn't. Yet. Vane leaned back, studying her like she was a horse he was considering purchasing. But it could be. I'm in a position to help if you're willing to be reasonable. What exactly are you proposing? Marriage, Miss Whitcombe. A practical arrangement that would benefit both of us. I would clear your family's debts, restore your social standing, provide you with the kind of life you deserve. In return, you would provide me with companionship. An heir, eventually. The usual arrangement. The usual arrangement, like she was a piece of furniture being moved from one room to another. That's very generous, Margaret said quickly, before Elara could respond. We would need time to consider, of course. Of course, Vane stood. I'll give you 1 week to think it over, but I should mention I'm not a patient man and this offer won't stand indefinitely. You would do well to remember that your options are limited. It wasn't quite a threat, but it was close. After he left, Margaret turned to Elara with desperate hope in her eyes. This is perfect, don't you see? He's offering to save us. He's offering to buy me. Elara, I heard him, Mother. He wants a wife who'll give him an heir and keep quiet. That's the arrangement. What's wrong with that? Many marriages are based on far less. Nothing's wrong with it, Elara said quietly. Except I don't want it. What you want and what we can afford are two very different things. Margaret's voice cracked. We're drowning, Elara. This is a lifeline. Or an anchor. She walked away before her mother could argue, her mind spinning. Marriage to Vane would solve everything. The debts, the house, the constant fear of losing what little they had left. But the price was her future, her freedom, possibly her life, if the rumors about his previous wives were true. Elara pressed her hands against her temples, trying to think. There had to be another way, there had to be. But as the afternoon stretched into evening, as she sat alone in her room and stared at the walls closing in, she couldn't think of one, and that terrified her more than anything else. 3 days later, the news reached Adrian in the form of a letter from his cousin. Adrian, thought you'd want to know. Lord Herrick Vane is courting the Whitcombe girl, the one you humiliated at the Ashford ball. Apparently, he's offering to clear her family's debts in exchange for marriage. Knowing Vane's reputation, I thought you might find that interesting. Regards. Richard Adrian read the letter twice, then set it down very carefully. Herrick Vane. The name alone made his jaw clench. Vane was everything wrong with the aristocracy wrapped in expensive clothing and fake charm. He was cruel, manipulative, and there were persistent rumors that his first 2 wives hadn't died of natural causes, despite what the official records said. And now he was targeting Elara Whitcombe. Adrian told himself it wasn't his problem, that she'd made her choices, he'd made his, and what happened to her was none of his concern. But the image of Vane's hands on her, of her trapped in a marriage to a man who would destroy her piece by piece, he couldn't shake it. Damn it, Adrian muttered. He called for his carriage before he could talk himself out of it. Some mistakes, he was beginning to realize, required fixing, even if you didn't want to admit they were mistakes in the first place. The Whitcombe sitting room had never felt smaller. Elara sat across from Lord Vane, watching his mouth move as he described his estate in Yorkshire. Something about gardens and stables and a ballroom that could hold 200 guests. His voice was smooth, practiced, like he'd given this speech before. He probably had. To his first wife. His second. "You seem distracted, Miss Whitcombe." Elara blinked. "I'm sorry, I was just thinking." "About what?" Vane's smile was indulgent, but his eyes were cold. Always cold. "About the future. Our future, I hope." He reached across the tea table and took her hand. His fingers were dry, papery. They made her skin crawl. "I know this is sudden, but I want you to understand. I can give you everything. Security, status, a life without worry." "That's very generous." "It's practical." His grip tightened slightly. "You need what I can provide. I need, well, a wife, children eventually. It's a fair exchange." "An exchange?" Like she was livestock. Elara pulled her hand back, trying to make it look natural. "I appreciate your offer, Lord Vane. Truly. But I need more time to consider. Time is a luxury you don't have." His voice didn't rise, but something in it changed, hardened. "Your creditors won't wait forever, neither will I." The door opened. Mary stood there, looking flustered. "I'm sorry to interrupt, miss, but I said we weren't to be disturbed." Margaret's voice came from the hallway, sharp with irritation. "Yes, ma'am, but the Duke of Blackthorn is here, and he insists—" Adrian walked past Mary like she didn't exist. The room went silent. He stood in the doorway, tall and imposing in his dark coat, his gray eyes sweeping the scene with cold precision. When his gaze landed on Vane, something flickered across his face. Recognition, disgust, something Elara couldn't quite name. "Your Grace." Vane stood slowly, his expression carefully neutral. "What an unexpected pleasure." "Vane," Adrian's voice was flat. "I need to speak with Miss Whitcombe. Privately. I'm afraid we're in the middle of a conversation. It wasn't a request." The tension in the room was suffocating. Vane's jaw tightened, but he forced a smile. "Of course. I wouldn't dream of keeping you." He turned to Elara, taking her hand again and pressing it to his lips. "I'll call on you tomorrow. We can continue our discussion then." It wasn't a suggestion. After he left, Margaret hovered in the doorway, looking between Adrian and Elara like she wasn't sure whether to stay or flee. "Mrs. Whitcombe," Adrian said quietly, "a moment alone with your daughter, if you please." "I don't think—" "Mother," Elara's voice was tired. "It's fine." Margaret left reluctantly, closing the door behind her. Elara stood, her arms crossed. "What do you want?" Adrian didn't answer right away. He walked to the window, staring out at their overgrown garden with an expression she couldn't read. "You're considering his offer," he said finally. "That's none of your business." "It is if you're about to make the biggest mistake of your life." Elara laughed bitterly. "That's rich coming from you. You destroyed my reputation. You're the reason I'm in this position in the first place." "I know." He turned to face her. "And I was wrong." The admission hung in the air between them. Elara stared at him. "What?" "I was wrong," Adrian repeated. "About you. About what you said at the ball. I've been thinking about it ever since, and you were right. I've been hiding behind managers and reports and convenience, letting things happen that I should have stopped. I came here to apologize." She didn't know what to say. Of all the things she'd expected from Adrian Blackthorn, an apology wasn't one of them. "That's unexpected." "I imagine it is." His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "I'm not good at this." "Clearly. But I'm serious about Vane. Don't marry him." "Why not? You said yourself I'm unmarriageable." "He's the only offer I have." "He's dangerous." Adrian's voice was hard. His first wife died falling downstairs. His second died of a sudden illness that no doctor could explain. Both deaths were ruled accidents, but there were questions. Investigations that went nowhere because Vane has money and influence and knows how to make problems disappear. Elara felt ice slide down her spine. "You're saying he killed them?" "I'm saying marrying him would be a death sentence." You don't know that. I know enough. Adrian moved closer. Listen to me. Vane is vicious. He collects things, wives, property, influence, and when they stop being useful, he discards them, one way or another. So what am I supposed to do? Elara's voice cracked. We're out of money, out of time, out of options. At least marriage to him would save my mother from losing everything. There's another option. Which is? Adrian took a breath. Marry me instead. Elara's mind went blank. Excuse me? A courtship, publicly announced. It would protect you from Vane, give you time to find a real solution. Are you insane? Probably. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. But I'm also serious. We announce an engagement. You move to my estate under the pretense of planning the wedding. It gives you breathing room, makes you untouchable to Vane, and buys time to sort out your family's debts. And then what? We just call it off? Eventually, once the situation is resolved. Elara shook her head. This is ridiculous. You hate me. I don't hate you. His voice was quiet. I don't even know you. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I did. And I'll spend the rest of this conversation apologizing if that's what it takes. Adrian's expression was serious. But right now you have a choice. Marry a man who will probably kill you within a year, or accept my help and at least survive long enough to hate me properly. Why would you do this? What do you get out of it? Peace of mind. He met her gaze. And maybe a chance to prove you wrong about me. It was insane. Completely, utterly insane. Elara looked at him, this man who'd destroyed her reputation, who represented everything she despised about the aristocracy, who was now offering her a lifeline wrapped in layers of deception and risk. If I say yes, she said slowly, there are conditions. Name them. Aim. First, the tenants you evicted. You reinstate them. Lower the rents to something they can actually afford. Adrian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Done. Second, this arrangement ends when I say it ends, not you, me. Agreed. Third, my mother never knows the truth. She's fragile enough already. As far as she's concerned, this is real. If that's what you want. Elara studied his face, looking for the trap, the angle, the thing she was missing. But all she saw was a man who looked as uncomfortable with this plan as she felt. One more thing, she said. If you ever humiliate me like that again, publicly or privately, I will make you regret it. I don't care if you're a duke. I don't care how much power you have. You will regret it. Adrian's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. Understood. Then I accept. They shook hands. His palm was warm, his grip firm. It felt like sealing a deal with the devil. I'll make the announcement tomorrow, Adrian said. Be ready for the fallout. Society won't like this. Society already hates me. What's a little more scandal? This will be different. They'll say terrible things about you, about us. You'll need to be prepared. Elara thought about Vane's cold eyes, his papery hands, the way he'd looked at her like something he was considering purchasing. I can handle it, she said. Adrian left the way he came, abruptly, without ceremony. The moment the door closed, Margaret burst into the room. What did he want? Why was he here? Elara took a breath. He came to apologize and to propose. Her mother's face went white. What? We're engaged. He's announcing it tomorrow. Margaret sat down hard in the nearest chair. I don't... Elara, this doesn't make sense. 3 days ago he destroyed you. Now he wants to marry you? He regrets what he said. He wants to make amends. By marrying you? That's not an apology. That's... Margaret stopped, her expression shifting from shock to something else. Hope. Desperate, fragile hope. This is incredible. The Duke of Blackthorn. Do you understand what this means? I'm aware, Mother. All our problems solved just like that. Margaret pressed her hands to her face. I thought we were finished. I thought... She started crying. Elara crossed the room and held her, feeling the weight of the lie settle around her shoulders like a cloak. This was the right choice. It had to be. Because the alternative was Vane. And Adrian was right about one thing. Marrying Vane would be a death sentence. At least this way she'd survive long enough to figure out what came next. The announcement appeared in the society pages the next morning. The Duke of Blackthorn is pleased to announce his engagement to Miss Elara Whitcombe. The wedding is planned for the spring. Elara read it 3 times, her coffee going cold in her hand. It was real now. No taking it back. The reactions came swiftly. By noon, their tiny sitting room was flooded with letters. Some congratulatory, most confused, a few outright hostile. Dear Miss Whitcombe, I cannot fathom what spell you've cast on the Duke. But rest assured, society will not forget your disgraceful behavior. Elara tossed that one in the fire. The one from Vane arrived by special courier at 2 o'clock. Miss Whitcombe, I see you've made your choice. How unfortunate. I had such hopes for us. Do convey my congratulations to His Grace. I'm sure you'll be very happy together. Though I wonder, does he know what he's getting? A woman with such a sharp tongue and reckless temperament can be difficult to manage. I suppose he'll find out soon enough. Yours, Herrick Vane. Elara's hands shook as she read it. There was something wrong about the letter. The tone was too calm, too knowing, like Vane suspected this wasn't real, or worse, like he knew it wasn't, and he was planning something. Elara? Margaret appeared in the doorway. The Duke's carriage is here. He's sent it to take you to his estate. Already? Apparently he wants you settled before the gossip gets too vicious. Margaret's smile was tremulous. He's being very protective. Or very controlling, Elara thought. But she didn't say it. She packed a small bag, the few decent dresses she owned, some books, basic necessities, and climbed into Adrian's carriage with her heart hammering against her ribs. The Blackthorn estate was enormous. Elara had known it would be. She'd heard stories about the Duke's property, the acres of land, the manor house that had been in his family for 200 years. But seeing it in person was different. The main house sprawled across a hill like something from a painting, stone walls covered in ivy, tall windows that caught the late afternoon sun, gardens that probably required a dozen groundskeepers. It was beautiful. It was also a prison she'd just walked into willingly. Adrian met her at the entrance, his expression unreadable. Welcome to Blackthorn Manor. It's... Elara searched for the right word. Intimidating. Most people say impressive. I'm not most people. His mouth twitched. No, you're not. He led her inside. The entrance hall was all marble and paintings and furniture that looked older than her entire family tree. Servants appeared and disappeared like ghosts, taking her bag, offering refreshments, hovering at the edges of her vision. Your rooms are in the east wing, Adrian said. I've arranged for a lady's maid. Her name is Beth. She'll help you settle in. How thoughtful. I'm trying. He stopped at the base of a grand staircase. I know this is strange, but we need to make it look real. That means appearances, public outings, dinners with my family. Can you handle that? Elara thought about Vane's letter, about the threat lurking behind his polite words. I can handle anything, she said. Adrian studied her for a moment. I believe you. Beth turned out to be a cheerful woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a tendency to talk too much. She showed Elara to her rooms, a suite that was easily 3 times the size of her bedroom at home, and immediately started fussing over her wardrobe. We'll need to order you some new dresses, miss. His Grace wants you properly attired for the engagement ball next week. Engagement ball? Oh yes, it's tradition. All the important families will attend. You'll meet His Grace's mother, his aunts, his cousins. Beth rattled off names that Elara immediately forgot. It'll be quite the event. I'm sure. After Beth left, Elara sat on the edge of the enormous 4-poster bed and tried to process everything. This was her life now, at least temporarily. Living in Adrian Blackthorn's house, pretending to be his fiancé, playing a role for an audience that already hated her. She was either very brave or very stupid, possibly both. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in. Adrian entered, looking uncomfortable. I wanted to make sure you're settled. I'm fine. Beth can be overwhelming. If you need different staff, she's fine. Everything's fine. Elara stood. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really do this? The truth. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he moved to the window, staring out at the grounds. You were right, he said finally. About me. About the evictions. I've spent years letting other people handle the difficult parts of running this estate because it was easier than confronting my own failures. When you called me a coward, it stung because it was true. So this is guilt? Partly. He turned to face her. But it's also practical. Vane is dangerous, and I'm in a position to help. It seemed necessary. You could have just paid off my family's debts. You didn't have to fake an engagement. Would you have accepted that? No, she wouldn't have. Pride wouldn't have allowed it. Probably not, Elara admitted. This way, you keep your pride. I keep my conscience. And Vane loses whatever game he was playing. Unless he decides to escalate. Let him try. Adrian's voice was cold. He can't touch you now. Not without going through me first. It should have been comforting. Instead, it made Elara feel like a chess piece being moved around a board she couldn't see. I need to know something, she said. What happens when this is over? When my family's debts are settled and Vane moves on to his next target? We end the engagement. Quietly. Amicably. You go back to your life. Just like that? Just like that. It sounded simple. Too simple. But Elara nodded anyway, because what choice did she have? The engagement ball was a nightmare wrapped in silk and champagne. Elara stood at the entrance to the Blackthorn ballroom wearing a gown that cost more than her family's house and felt every eye in the room turned toward her. Adrian appeared at her elbow, offering his arm. Ready? No. Good. Neither am I. They descended the stairs together. The whispers started immediately. That's her, the one who insulted him. Can you imagine? Going from social pariah to duchess in a week? She must have something on him. Blackmail, perhaps. Adrian's hand tightened on hers. Ignore them. I'm trying. They made it halfway across the room before Adrian's mother intercepted them. Dowager Duchess Catherine Blackthorn was a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that could freeze water. She looked at Elara the way someone might examine a stain on expensive fabric. So, you're the girl. Mother. Adrian's voice held a warning. This isn't the time. When is the time? You announce an engagement to a complete stranger without consulting your family, and I'm supposed to smile and pretend everything is normal? You're supposed to be civil. Catherine's laugh was sharp. Civil, of course, she turned to Elara. Tell me, Miss Whitcombe, what exactly are your intentions toward my son? Mother, it's fine. Elara met Catherine's gaze without flinching. My intentions are to marry him, Your Grace, as announced. And your family's debts? Purely coincidental, I suppose? The ballroom had gone quiet. Everyone was listening. My family's finances are my concern, Elara said carefully, not yours. Everything about this family is my concern, especially when someone is clearly taking advantage. That's enough. Adrian's voice cut through the room like a blade. Miss Whitcombe is my choice, my decision. If you can't respect that, you're welcome to leave. Catherine's face went white. For a moment, Elara thought she might actually slap him. Instead, she smiled, cold and brittle and entirely without warmth. Of course, darling, whatever you say. She turned and walked away, her spine rigid. The whispers exploded. Adrian pulled Elara toward the terrace. I'm sorry, she's protective. I understand. She's cruel. His jaw was tight. And wrong. About you. Is she, though? Elara looked at him. Everyone thinks I'm using you. Maybe they're right. You're not using me. We have an arrangement. That's different. Is it? Before he could answer, someone else approached. A man in his 50s with Adrian's eyes and a politician's smile. Adrian, introduce me to your bride. Elara, this is my uncle, Lord Richard Blackthorn. Richard took her hand, his grip warm. A pleasure, my dear. You've certainly caused quite a stir. So I've heard. Don't let Catherine bother you. She's always been territorial about Adrian. First son, heir to the dukedom, she's invested in his choice of wife. I'll try not to take it personally. Do. Richard's smile widened. She'll respect you more if you fight back. The Blackthorns don't trust anyone who's too agreeable. After he left, Elara turned to Adrian. Your family is exhausting. Wait until you meet my cousins. The rest of the evening blurred together. Introductions to people whose names she forgot immediately. Dances with men who held her too close, and women who whispered behind fans. Questions about wedding dates and guest lists and 100 other details she had no answers for. By midnight, Elara's face hurt from smiling. They escaped to the library, A massive room lined with books that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. That was horrible, Elara said, collapsing into a chair. It was necessary. Adrian poured 2 glasses of brandy, handing her one. Now society knows you're under my protection, Vane included. Speaking of Vane, I saw him tonight, watching us. Adrian's expression darkened. Where? Near the entrance. He left early, but he was definitely here. Of course he was. He wanted to see if this was real. And he's probably not convinced. Adrian drank his brandy in one swallow. Which means he'll be watching, looking for cracks. Then we can't give him any. No, we can't. Elara sipped her drink, feeling the burn slide down her throat. How long do we have to keep this up? As long as it takes. Weeks, maybe months. Months? The word came out sharper than she intended. I can't pretend to be your fiancé for months. You can if the alternative is Vane. He was right. She knew he was right. But the thought of living this lie, day after day, watching society's suspicious eyes, pretending to feel something she didn't, it was suffocating. I should go to bed, she said quietly. It's late. Adrian walked her to her rooms. Outside her door, he stopped. Thank you, he said. For what? For trusting me. I know that wasn't easy. Elara almost laughed. Trust. As if that's what this was. But she nodded anyway, because what else could she say? Inside her room, Beth had left out a nightgown and turned down the bed. Elara changed mechanically, her mind elsewhere. She was in too deep now. No going back. All she could do was play the role and hope it didn't destroy her in the process. Sleep didn't come easy. When it did, she dreamed of Vane's cold eyes and Adrian's unreadable face and a trap closing around her with no way out. The next morning, a letter arrived. Beth brought it with breakfast, looking nervous. It was delivered by a private courier, miss. No return address. Elara's hands shook as she opened it. My dear Miss Whitcombe, congratulations on your engagement. How fortunate for you. Though I can't help but wonder, does the Duke know he's being played? Or is he complicit in this little charade? Either way, I look forward to seeing how it all ends. Some games are more dangerous than others. Do be careful. A friend. The signature meant nothing, but Elara knew who'd sent it, Vane, and he was right about one thing. This game was dangerous, more dangerous than she'd realized. Elara crumpled the letter in her fist, her pulse hammering in her ears. Vane knew, or suspected. Either way, the threat was clear. She crossed the room and threw the letter into the fireplace, watching the paper curl and blacken. The words disappeared, but the fear didn't. A knock at the door made her jump. Come in. Adrian entered without waiting for permission, his expression tight. We have a problem. If it's about Vane's letter, I already know. It's not just the letter. He held up a newspaper. This morning's society column. Elara took it, her stomach sinking as she read. Sources close to the Duke of Blackthorn suggest the engagement may be less romantic than advertised. Questions arise about Miss Whitcomb's sudden elevation from social outcast to Duchess-to-be. Some speculate financial motives. Others whisper of blackmail. The Duke's office has declined to comment. Vane, Elara said quietly. Probably. He's feeding rumors, trying to undermine us before we're even established. Adrian paced the length of her room. If society starts believing this is a sham, it defeats the entire purpose. So what do? We make it more convincing. Public appearances, affection. We need to sell this. The word affection hung in the air like something dangerous. How affectionate are we talking? Elara asked. Adrian stopped pacing. Enough to be believable. Nothing inappropriate, but we'll need to be comfortable with each other. In public. Comfortable. Hand-holding, dancing, the occasional... He cleared his throat. Other gestures couples make. You can't even say it. I'm trying to be respectful. You mean you're trying to avoid saying we'll have to act like we're in love when we can barely stand to be in the same room? Adrian's jaw tightened. I don't dislike you. You don't know me well enough to dislike me. That's different. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to argue. Then his shoulders dropped slightly. You're right. I don't know you. But I'm trying to help, and right now that means convincing everyone that this engagement is real. Are you willing to do that? Or should we call this off now? Elara thought about her mother's face when she'd heard the news, about their house, their debts, the creditors who wouldn't wait much longer, about Vane's cold eyes and the bodies of his previous wives. "I'm willing," she said. "Good. Then we start today. There's a garden party this afternoon at the Ashford estate. We're attending together." The Ashford garden party was exactly as awful as Elara expected. Women in pastel dresses clustered under parasols, drinking tea and shredding reputations with surgical precision. Men gathered in groups, discussing politics and property, while servants circulated with refreshments. Elara arrived on Adrian's arm, wearing a new dress that Beth had somehow procured overnight, pale green silk that made her feel like an imposter. The whispers started immediately. "There she is. Bold of her to show her face. Did you read the morning column?" Adrian's hand covered hers where it rested on his arm. The gesture was small, but everyone noticed. "Ignore them," he murmured. "I'm trying." Lady Ashford greeted them with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Your Grace, Miss Whitcombe, how lovely to see you both." "Thank you for having us," Adrian said smoothly. "Of course, though I must admit I was surprised to receive your acceptance, given the circumstances." "What circumstances would those be?" Lady Ashford's smile sharpened. "Oh, you know, the gossip. People do love to talk." "Then perhaps they should find more interesting subjects." Adrian's voice was pleasant, but his eyes were ice. "Shall we, darling?" The endearment sounded foreign in his mouth. Elara forced herself not to flinch. They moved through the party like dancers executing a choreographed routine. Adrian's hand at the small of her back, her fingers brushing his arm. Small touches that looked casual but felt calculated. It was exhausting. "You're doing well," Adrian said quietly as they paused near the rose garden. "I feel like a performing monkey." "You look like a woman in love." "I look like a woman trying not to vomit from stress." His mouth twitched. "That too." A man approached, older with thinning hair and the comfortable posture of inherited wealth. "Blackthorn, glad to see you, and this must be your bride-to-be." "Lord Pemberton, may I introduce Miss Elara Whitcombe?" Pemberton's eyes traveled over her with the subtlety of a livestock inspection. "Charming. Tell me, Miss Whitcombe, how did you manage to capture our elusive Duke? He's been avoiding matrimony for years." "I asked nicely," Elara said. Adrian choked on his wine. Pemberton laughed. "Spirit, I like that. Though I wonder, have you considered what you're getting into? Being a duchess isn't all balls and jewels. It's responsibility, duty, managing estates, tenants, staff. No small task for someone of your background." The insult was delivered with a smile, but it landed like a slap. "I'm aware of the responsibilities," Elara said carefully. "I welcome them." "Do you? Because from what I hear, your family couldn't even manage their own finances. How do you expect to handle the Blackthorn properties?" Adrian stepped forward. "That's enough, Pemberton. I'm simply asking legitimate questions. You're insulting my fiancée. There's a difference." Adrian's voice was dangerously soft. "I suggest you find someone else to interrogate." Pemberton's smile faded. "Of course. My apologies, Miss Whitcombe. I meant no offense." He walked away quickly. Elara's hands were shaking. She clasped them together, trying to steady herself. "Ignore him," Adrian said. "He's a bore. He's saying what everyone's thinking. That doesn't make him right." "Doesn't it?" Elara looked at him. "I don't know how to be a duchess. I don't know how to manage estates or oversee staff or any of the things your world requires. He's right to question me. You stood up to me in front of half of London. You're brave enough to marry a stranger to save your family. You'll figure out the rest." It should have been comforting. Instead, it just made her feel more inadequate. They stayed another hour, enduring more questions, more whispers, more scrutiny. By the time they left, Elara's face hurt from smiling. In the carriage, she let the mask drop. "I can't do this." Adrian looked up from the papers he'd been reviewing. "Can't do what?" "This. Any of this. I'm not built for your world, the politics, the games, the constant judgment. You survived today." "Barely. And it's only going to get worse, isn't it? More parties, more questions, more people looking for reasons to hate me?" "Probably. His honesty was somehow worse than a lie would have been. "I should end this now," Elara said quietly, "before I embarrass you further." "You haven't embarrassed me." "I insulted you publicly. I'm dragging your family's reputation through the mud just by existing in it. How is that not embarrassing?" Adrian set down his papers, his expression unreadable. "Do you want to know what I find embarrassing? The fact that I spent years letting my estate managers exploit tenants because I was too comfortable to question them. The fact that it took a stranger calling me a coward to make me examine my own failures. That's embarrassing. You? You're inconvenient. There's a difference." "Inconvenient," Elara repeated. "How flattering." "I didn't mean—" He stopped, running a hand through his hair. "I'm not good at this. Comfort, reassurance, feelings." "I've noticed." "But I meant what I said at the party. You're stronger than you think, and if Pemberton and his ilk can't see that, it's their loss, not yours." Elara wanted to believe him, but belief required trust, and trust was in short supply. The carriage pulled up to Blackthorn Manor. Adrian climbed out first, offering his hand. "Tomorrow we're dining with my mother," he said. "She's requested a private meal to get to know you better." "That sounds like a trap." "It absolutely is, but we need her support, or at least her neutrality. Can you handle it?" Elara thought about everything she'd already endured. What was one more ordeal? "I'll manage," she said. Dinner with Catherine Blackthorn was exactly as excruciating as anticipated. The Dowager Duchess sat at the head of the table, presiding over the meal like a queen dispensing judgment. Adrian sat to her right, Elara to her left. The distance felt intentional. "So, Miss Whitcombe," Catherine's voice was cordial, but her eyes were calculating. "Tell me about your family. Your father, I understand, is deceased?" "Yes, Your Grace, 5 years ago." "And your mother?" "She's managing as best she can." "Managing?" Catherine's smile was thin. "I suppose that's one word for it. I hear the Whitcombe estate is rather diminished these days." Adrian's fork clattered against his plate. "Mother—" "I'm simply making conversation, darling. Surely Miss Whitcombe doesn't object to discussing her family." "It's fine," Elara said, though it wasn't. "Yes, we've had difficulties. Financial and otherwise." "How unfortunate. And now you're marrying my son. Some might call that convenient timing." The accusation hung in the air, barely disguised. "Some might," Elara agreed. "Others might call it fortunate. Perspective depends on where you're standing, doesn't it?" Catherine's eyes narrowed. "Indeed. And where exactly are you standing, Miss Whitcombe?" "I'm not sure I understand the question." "Don't you? Let me be clear. Are you standing beside my son because you care for him, or because he represents a solution to your problems?" "Mother," Adrian's voice was sharp. "That's enough." "Is it?" "Because I think it's a fair question. You barely know this girl. You announce an engagement out of nowhere. You bring her into this family without consulting anyone, and you expect me to simply accept it? I expect you to respect my choices. Even when those choices are clearly motivated by guilt rather than genuine feeling?" The words landed like a blow. Elara set down her napkin carefully. "You think Adrian proposed out of guilt?" "I think my son is an honorable man who feels responsible for ruining your prospects. I think he's trying to fix a mistake, and you're taking advantage of that impulse." "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough. I know your type, desperate, opportunistic, willing to attach yourself to wealth and power regardless of the cost. That's not Isn't it?" Catherine leaned forward. "Tell me honestly, Miss Whitcombe, if my son were a poor man with no title, would you still be sitting here?" The question cut deeper than it should have, because the answer was no. If Adrian were poor, this arrangement wouldn't exist. She wouldn't be here. The engagement would be meaningless. But that wasn't the same as using him. Was it? "Your Grace," Elara said slowly, "I won't pretend this engagement is a love match. Adrian and I barely know each other, but I'm not using him. We have an arrangement that benefits both of us. If you can't accept that, I understand, but I won't apologize for doing what's necessary to survive." Catherine's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe, or grudging respect. "At least you're honest," she said finally. "That's something." The rest of the dinner passed in tense silence. When it ended, Elara excused herself quickly, needing space to breathe. She made it halfway down the hall before Adrian caught up. I'm sorry, she had no right. She had every right. She's your mother. She's protecting you. From what? You're not a threat, aren't I? Elara turned to face him. Your mother sees what everyone else sees. A social climber using you for money and status. Maybe she's right. She's not. How do you know? We made this arrangement for practical reasons. I needed help. You felt guilty. Where's the nobility in that? Adrian stepped closer, his voice dropping. The nobility is in choosing to help someone when you don't have to, in standing up for what's right even when it's inconvenient. You called me a coward, and you were right. But I'm trying to be better. This engagement, fake or not, is part of that. So I'm your redemption project. You're a person who deserved better than what I gave you. I'm trying to correct that. Elara wanted to argue, to tell him she didn't need his charity or his guilt-driven heroics. But the truth was, she did need them. Because without this arrangement, she'd be married to Vane by now, or worse. Your mother hates me, she said quietly. She'll come around. Will she? Or will this charade fall apart the moment someone digs too deep? Adrian didn't have an answer for that. The next morning, everything went to hell. Elara was in the library when Beth burst in, her face pale. Miss, you need to see this. She handed over a newspaper, not the society pages this time, but the front section. Duke of Blackthorn. Accused of fraud. Anonymous sources claim engagement to Miss Whitcombe is a sham designed to protect the lady from the advances of Lord Herrick Vane. Questions arise about the legitimacy of the arrangement and whether His Grace is involved in an elaborate deception. Elara's blood turned to ice. There's more. Beth's hand shook as she turned the page. Lord Vane has issued a statement. He's claiming you were promised to him first, that the Duke interfered in a prior arrangement. That's a lie. I know, miss, but it's in print. Everyone will read it. Elara's mind raced. This was Vane's move, his counterstrike. If society believed the engagement was fake, Adrian's protection meant nothing. Worse, they'd both be exposed as liars. The scandal would destroy what little reputation she had left and damage Adrian's standing as well. She had to find him. Adrian was in his study, surrounded by papers and looking like he hadn't slept. You've seen it, Elara said. The entire country has probably seen it by now. He threw down the newspaper. Vane is smarter than I gave him credit for. What do? We deny it, publicly and forcefully. Will anyone believe us? They will if we give them a reason to. Adrian stood, his jaw set. We move the wedding up. Make it real. Elara's heart stopped. What? If we marry, truly marry, it proves the engagement was legitimate. It takes away Vane's leverage and ends the speculation. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. It's the only way to shut this down before it spirals. Adrian, we can't. That wasn't the plan. We were supposed to fake this until my debts were settled, then quietly end it. Actually getting married is necessary. His voice was firm. Unless you have a better idea. She didn't, and that was the problem. This is insane, Elara whispered. I know, but it's also the only option that doesn't end with both of us ruined. What about after? We'd be legally bound, married. You can't just undo that. We can figure that out later. Right now, we need to act. Elara paced the study, her mind spinning. Marriage, real marriage, to a man she barely knew, barely trusted, barely understood. But the alternative was Vane, or public humiliation, or both. If we do this, she said slowly, I want something in return. Name it. Access to your estate records, all of them. I want to see where the money's going, who's being paid, which families are struggling. If I'm going to be your wife, even temporarily, I want to actually help fix the problems I accused you of creating. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Agreed. You'll have full access. And when this is over, when the debts are settled and Vane gives up, we revisit the arrangement, together, as equals. Done. They shook hands. The gesture felt absurdly formal given they were agreeing to get married. When? Elara asked. 3 days. Small ceremony. Immediate family only. We'll make a public announcement afterward. 3 days. Elara felt the walls closing in. I need to tell my mother, she said. Tell her the truth or the story? The story. She can't know this isn't real. She's too fragile. Adrian nodded. I'll arrange everything else. Elara left his study feeling like she was walking toward a cliff with no way to stop. Margaret was thrilled. 3 days. Oh, Elara, this is wonderful. I knew he cared for you. I could see it. Mother, please, we need to plan. Your dress, the flowers, the guests. It's a small ceremony. Adrian's handling the details. But you're the bride. You should have a say. I trust him to manage it. The lie tasted bitter. I just wanted you to know. Margaret pulled her into a hug, crying happy tears. Elara held her, feeling like the worst daughter in the world. This was supposed to protect her mother, save her from losing everything. Instead, it was just another lie piled on top of all the others. The next 2 days blurred together in a haze of preparations Elara barely participated in. Beth brought dress options. Adrian's secretary coordinated with the church. Catherine sent a note that was simultaneously congratulatory and disapproving. Vane sent flowers, black roses, no card. The message was clear. He's not going to stop, Elara told Adrian the night before the wedding. They were in the library again. It had become their unofficial meeting place. I know, Adrian said quietly, but once we're married, his leverage disappears. He can't claim you were promised to him. He can't suggest the engagement was fake. We'll have legal protection. Unless he escalates. He won't. He's too smart. Public scandal is one thing. Actual violence or harassment is another. He won't cross that line. Elara wanted to believe him, but the black roses sat on her dresser upstairs like a threat. What if you're wrong? She asked. Adrian met her gaze. Then I'll deal with it. Whatever he tries, he goes through me first. I promise you that. It was the first time he'd made a promise that sounded personal rather than practical. Elara nodded slowly. Okay. Okay? Okay. I trust you. For now. That's a start. They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling in the hearth. Are you scared? Adrian asked suddenly. The question surprised her. Of what? Tomorrow. Marriage. All of it. Elara considered lying, then decided against it. Terrified, she admitted. You? Absolutely. It was the most honest conversation they'd had since this entire arrangement began. We're really doing this, Elara said. We are. It's completely insane. It is. But necessary. Yes. Elara looked at him, really looked at him, for maybe the first time. He wasn't just the arrogant duke anymore. He was a man trying to fix his mistakes, struggling with feelings he didn't understand, making choices that terrified him just as much as they terrified her. We'll figure it out, she said quietly. Somehow. Adrian's expression softened. Together. Together, Elara agreed. The wedding was small, intimate, nothing like the grand society affair it should have been. Elara wore a simple white dress. Adrian wore formal black. Catherine watched from the front pew with an expression that managed to be both proud and skeptical. Margaret cried. The vows were traditional, standard. The words felt strange in Elara's mouth, promising to love and honor a man she barely knew. When the minister said, "You may kiss the bride," Adrian hesitated. Then he leaned in and pressed his lips to hers. It was brief, chaste, a performance for the handful of witnesses. But Elara felt it anyway. The warmth of his mouth, the steadiness of his hands on her waist, the way her heart stuttered in her chest. When he pulled back, something in his eyes had changed. She couldn't name it, didn't want to. They were married now, for real, no going back. The wedding breakfast was strained. Catherine made polite conversation. Margaret gushed. Adrian's Uncle Richard offered toasts that were equal parts congratulatory and pointed. By the time it ended, Elara was exhausted. Adrian found her in the garden afterwards, staring at nothing. How are you holding up? I'm married to a stranger who I may or may not actually like. How do you think I'm holding up? He almost smiled. Fair point. What happens now? Now we wait. See how Vane responds. See if society accepts this or tears us apart anyway. Comforting. I'm not very good at comfort. I've noticed. They stood in silence, watching the sun set over the blackthorn grounds. For what it's worth, Adrian said quietly, I'll do everything I can to make sure you don't regret this. You can't promise that. No, but I can try. Elara wanted to say something. Thank you, maybe. Or I hope so. Instead, she just nodded. That night, alone in her room, technically their room now, though Adrian had been gentlemanly enough to maintain separate quarters, Elara stared at the ceiling and wondered what she'd just done. She'd married Adrian Blackthorne. Not fake engaged, not pretending. Actually, legally, permanently married. The knock on her door came just after midnight. Beth stood there, her face white. Your Grace, there's a fire. In the east wing, near your mother's quarters. Elara's blood turned to ice. What? The staff is trying to contain it, but it's spreading fast. His Grace has gone to help evacuate. Elara was running before Beth finished speaking. The hallway was filled with smoke. Servants rushed past carrying water, blankets, anything that might help. Mother! Elara screamed. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe. The smoke was too thick. Strong hands grabbed her, pulling her back. You can't go in there, Adrian's voice, rough with smoke. My mother! I'll get her. Stay here! He disappeared into the smoke before she could argue. Elara waited, every second an eternity. When Adrian emerged, he was carrying Margaret. Her face was soot-stained, her eyes wide with shock, but she was alive. I've got you, Adrian said, setting her down gently. You're safe. Elara dropped to her knees beside her mother. Are you hurt? I'm not. Margaret coughed, her voice ragged. What happened? Fire, Adrian said grimly. Started in the hallway outside your room. We're still trying to put it out. Elara looked at him, really looked at him. His jacket was singed. His hands were burned. His face was set in an expression she'd never seen before, fury barely contained. This wasn't an accident, she said quietly. No. His voice was deadly calm. It wasn't. Vain. It had to be vain. And if he'd succeeded, if Adrian had been seconds slower, if the smoke had been thicker, her mother would be dead. She would be dead. We need to call the authorities, Elara said, her voice shaking. We will. But first, we need to make sure everyone is safe. It took hours to contain the fire. Hours to evacuate the staff, check for injuries, assess the damage. By dawn, the east wing was a charred ruin. Margaret was being tended to by the physician. The servants were being housed in the guest quarters. And Elara sat in Adrian's study, staring at the burned scrap of fabric one of the footmen had found near where the fire started. It smelled like lamp oil. Deliberate. Intentional. Someone had tried to kill them. Adrian entered, his face grim. The magistrate is on his way. I've also sent word to London. If Vane thinks he can get away with this, he almost did. Elara's voice was hollow. If you hadn't gotten to her in time, but I did. This time. What about next time? Adrian knelt in front of her, his burned hands covering hers. There won't be a next time, I swear it. He's gone too far. Whatever protection he thought he had, it's gone now. I'll make sure of it. Elara looked into his eyes and saw something she'd never seen before. Not duty, not guilt. Rage. Pure, focused, dangerous rage. What are you going to do? She whispered. Adrian's jaw tightened. Whatever it takes. The magistrate arrived at 8 in the morning, looking simultaneously important and uncomfortable. Sir Edmund Hartley was a round man with thinning hair and the cautious demeanor of someone who'd learned not to make enemies of powerful people. He examined the burned hallway with Adrian, taking notes, asking careful questions. Elara watched from the doorway, her arms crossed. You're certain it was deliberate? Hartley asked, crouching near the scorch marks. The smell of lamp oil is still present, Adrian said coldly. The fire started in 3 separate locations simultaneously. Someone wanted to ensure it spread quickly. And you suspect Lord Vane? I know it was Vane. Hartley's pen paused. That's a serious accusation, Your Grace. Lord Vane is a respected member of... Lord Vane has been harassing my wife since I announced our engagement. He sent threatening letters. He spread rumors. And now someone conveniently sets a fire that nearly kills her and her mother the night after our wedding. If you can't see the connection, you're not looking. The magistrate cleared his throat. I understand your anger. But without evidence directly linking Lord Vane to the crime, then find evidence. Adrian's voice was sharp enough to cut. That's your job, isn't it? I'll do everything in my power, Your Grace. But these investigations take time. Time we don't have. Whoever did this will try again. Hartley looked genuinely troubled. I'll station men here for your protection, and I'll make inquiries about Lord Vane's whereabouts last night. His whereabouts don't matter. He wouldn't have done this himself. He would have hired someone. Then we'll look for whoever he hired. But Your Grace, you must understand, men like Lord Vane have resources, protection. If we move against him without ironclad proof, he could bury us in lawsuits and political pressure. Let him try. After Hartley left, Adrian found Elara in the guest quarters where Margaret was resting. Her mother was asleep, the physician having given her something for the shock. Elara sat beside the bed, holding her hand. How is she? Adrian asked quietly. Alive. That's something. The magistrate will investigate. The magistrate is scared. Elara looked up at him. You saw it. He knows Vane is dangerous, and he doesn't want to be the one who confronts him. He'll do his job. Will he? Or will this investigation disappear quietly while Vane walks free? Adrian's jaw tightened. I won't let that happen. How? By threatening him? By using your title? Vane has just as much influence as you do, maybe more, and he's willing to kill to get what he wants. Are you? The question hung between them. No, Adrian said finally. I'm not willing to kill, but I'm willing to destroy him, legally, publicly, completely. How? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. Elara stood, careful not to wake her mother. We need more than anger and good intentions. We need proof. Something concrete that ties Vane to this fire, to his wives' deaths, to everything he's done. Without that, he wins. Then we find proof. Where? How? He's been getting away with this for years. What makes you think we can succeed where everyone else failed? Adrian stepped closer, his voice dropping. Because I have something they didn't. You. Elara blinked. What? You see things other people miss. You ask questions no one else asks. You challenged me when everyone else just agreed. If anyone can find the crack in Vane's armor, it's you. It was the first time he'd spoken to her like an equal. Not a charity case. Not a problem to solve. An equal. I don't know where to start, Elara admitted. Neither do I. But we start somewhere. Together. The word together settled over them like a promise neither had expected to make. They began that afternoon. Adrian's study became war room headquarters. Estate ledgers spread across every surface, letters, reports, newspaper clippings, anything that might contain information about Vane. His first wife died 6 years ago, Adrian said, flipping through old society pages. Caroline Vane, née Thornton, 23 years old, fell down the stairs at their country estate. The investigation ruled it an accident. Was there an investigation? Elara asked. Cursory. The local magistrate found no evidence of foul play. Who was the magistrate? Adrian checked his notes. Sir Edmund Hartley. Elara's blood went cold. The same man who just examined our fire. Yes. So Vane already has him in his pocket. That's why he's dragging his feet. He covered up the first death, probably the second. He's not going to suddenly grow a conscience now. Adrian's expression darkened. We can't rely on official channels then. No. We need to find our own proof. How? Elara thought for a moment. Servants, staff, the people who actually lived in those houses when Vane's wives died. They see everything, and no one pays attention to them. Finding them won't be easy. Vane dismissed most of his household after each death. They're scattered across England by now. Then we start with the ones we can find. Anyone still working in the area. Anyone who might talk. Adrian studied her. This is dangerous. If Vane finds out we're investigating him, he already tried to kill us. How much more dangerous can it get? Much more. He's been subtle so far. Fires that look like accidents. If he realizes we're actively hunting him, he might abandon subtlety entirely. Good. Let him try. I'm tired of being afraid. There was steel in her voice that hadn't been there before. The fire had changed something, burned away the last of her hesitation, and replaced it with fury. Adrian saw it, and something in his expression shifted. Recognition, maybe. or respect. "All right," he said. "We hunt." The first lead came from Thomas Graves, Adrian's estate manager. "I made some inquiries, Your Grace," Thomas said, standing awkwardly in the study, "about Lord Vane's former staff. There's a woman, Mrs. Fletcher. She was housekeeper at Vane's estate when his first wife died. She's working at an inn near Dover now." "Will she talk?" Elara asked. "I don't know, Your Grace, but she's the only one I could locate who was there." Adrian stood. "Then we go to Dover." "Both of us?" Elara said. "Both of us. If she's reluctant to talk to me, maybe she'll talk to you." They left the next morning, telling Margaret they were visiting one of Adrian's other properties. The lie came easier now. Too easy. The journey took most of the day. By the time they reached the inn, a tired-looking building near the docks, the sun was setting. Mrs. Fletcher was a weathered woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a suspicious expression. "I don't know what you want from me," she said when they found her in the kitchen, "but I've got nothing to say about Lord Vane." "We just want to know what happened to Caroline," Elara said gently. "His first wife. She fell. That's what happened." "Did she?" Adrian asked. "Or was there more to it?" Mrs. Fletcher's hand stilled on the dough she was kneading. "I don't know what you mean." "Please." Elara stepped closer. "Someone tried to kill me and my mother. We think it was Vane. If he did the same to Caroline, if you know something, we need to hear it." The older woman looked between them, her expression conflicted. "He'll destroy me if I talk," she said finally. "I've got a job here, a life. I can't—" "We'll protect you," Adrian said. "Whatever you need, employment, money, relocation, I'll provide it. Just tell us the truth." Mrs. Fletcher was silent for a long moment. Then she wiped her hands on her apron and sat down heavily. "She didn't fall," she said quietly. "Not accidentally." Elara's heart hammered. "What do you mean?" "I heard them fighting that night, Lord Vane and Miss Caroline. She was crying, saying she wanted to leave. He was angry, so angry." Mrs. Fletcher's hand shook. "Then I heard the scream, the crash. When I got there, she was at the bottom of the stairs, and he was standing at the top, white as a ghost." "Did you tell the magistrate?" "I tried. Sir Hartley. He took my statement, then told me I was mistaken, that I must have misheard, that Lord Vane was devastated by his wife's death, and I was making things worse with baseless accusations." "So he buried it," Adrian said, his voice hard. "He buried it, and Lord Vane made sure I understood that if I kept talking, I'd lose everything, so I kept quiet. Took the money he offered me to disappear, and I've been living with it ever since." Elara sat down across from her. "Will you testify to this? Officially? Against Lord Vane? Against Sir Hartley? They'll call me a liar, a bitter servant looking for attention. Not if we have other witnesses, not if we can prove a pattern." Mrs. Fletcher looked at her with tired eyes. "You really think you can take him down? A man with his money and connections?" "I think we have to try," Elara said. The older woman was quiet, then she nodded slowly. "All right, I'll testify. But you'd better make it count, because if this fails, he'll make sure I never work again." "It won't fail," Adrian said. "I promise you that." They left Dover with their first real piece of evidence. In the carriage, Elara felt something shift inside her, the first spark of hope in days. "One witness isn't enough," she said. "We need more." "The second wife," Adrian said. "Elizabeth Vane. She died of illness, supposedly, but there must have been staff who were there." "Can Thomas find them?" "He's already trying." They worked through the night after returning to Blackthorn Manor. Adrian sent letters to contacts across England. Elara pored over society pages, looking for any mention of Vane's households, his associates, anyone who might have information. By morning, they had 3 more names. A footman who'd worked for Vane during his second marriage. A maid who'd been dismissed shortly after Elizabeth's death. A stable hand who'd left Vane's employ under mysterious circumstances. One by one, they tracked them down. The footman was difficult, scared. He'd been paid well to keep quiet, and Vane's shadow still terrified him. But Elara wore him down with patience and persistence. "She wasn't sick," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Lady Elizabeth. She was healthy, strong. Then one day she started getting headaches, stomach pains. The doctor couldn't explain it. Within a month, she was dead." Poison? Adrian asked. I don't know for certain, but I saw Lord Vane mixing things into her tea, powders. He said it was medicine the doctor prescribed. But when I asked the doctor later, he had no idea what I was talking about. Did you tell anyone? Who would I tell? Who would believe a footman over a lord? They got similar stories from the maid and the stable hand. Pieces of a puzzle that, assembled together, painted a picture of a man who killed casually and covered it meticulously, but proving it was another matter entirely. We need something physical, Elara said, staring at their collection of statements. Something that can't be dismissed as servant gossip. What do you suggest? The house, Vane's estate. If he poisoned Elizabeth, there might be traces, bottles, containers, anything he used. That was years ago. It's long gone by now. Maybe. But people like Vane are arrogant. They don't think they'll ever be caught. What if he kept something? What if there's evidence still there? Adrian looked at her like she'd suggested storming a fortress. You want to break into Vane's house? I want to search it, legally if possible. And if legal options aren't available? Elara met his gaze. Then we do what's necessary. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Vane was hosting a ball, a grand affair meant to celebrate, ironically, his birthday. He's inviting everyone, Adrian said, reading the invitation that had arrived that morning, including us. That's bold. It's strategic. If he's publicly welcoming us, it makes him look innocent, like a man with nothing to hide, or like a man who wants us in his house so he can control the narrative. Either way, it's an opportunity. We attend the ball. While everyone's distracted, we search. How? His staff will be everywhere. Adrian's expression turned calculating. Not if we're smart about it. We bring our own people. Servants who can blend in, search quietly. Thomas knows the layout of Vane's estate. He worked there briefly years ago. He can guide them. It was risky, dangerous. If they were caught, but they were out of options. Let's do it, Elara said. The night of the ball, Elara dressed in emerald silk that made her feel like she was wearing armor. Adrian appeared at her door, looking sharp in formal black. Ready? He asked. No, but let's go anyway. Vane's estate was even grander than Blackthorn Manor. All white columns and glittering windows and excessive wealth on display. The man himself greeted them at the entrance, his smile cold and knowing. Your Grace, your new bride. How delightful that you could attend. We wouldn't miss it, Adrian said smoothly. I was so sorry to hear about the fire at your estate. How terrible. I do hope everyone is recovering. The concern in his voice was perfectly performed and completely fake. We're managing, Elara said. Thank you for asking. Of course. Terrible things. Fires. So unpredictable. One never knows when disaster might strike. The threat was barely veiled. Adrian's hand found Elara's back, steadying her. Indeed. Though I find disasters are often more predictable than they seem, don't you? Vane's smile didn't waver. I suppose it depends on perspective. Enjoy the evening. He moved on to greet other guests. I want to hit him, Elara muttered. Get in line. They circulated through the party, playing their roles. Adrian introduced her to business associates. Elara made polite conversation with people she'd never see again. All the while, she watched. Their people were already in position. Thomas had arranged for 3 trusted servants to be hired as temporary staff for the evening. They moved through the house like ghosts, searching. An hour passed, then 2. Elara was beginning to think they'd find nothing when Thomas appeared at her elbow, his expression carefully neutral. Your Grace, a moment? They followed him to an alcove away from the crowds. We found something, Thomas said quietly, in his study, a locked cabinet. What was in it? Adrian asked. Papers, letters, and bottles. Small glass bottles with no labels. Elara's pulse jumped. Did you take them? 2 of them. The rest we left so he wouldn't notice immediately. Where are they now? Hidden in your carriage. We'll take them to a chemist, have them analyzed. It was perfect. Too perfect. This is almost too easy, Elara said. Why would he keep evidence like that? Arrogance, Adrian said. He doesn't think anyone will look, or if they do, he doesn't think they'll find anything. Or it's a trap. Then we spring it carefully. They stayed another hour to avoid suspicion, danced, smiled, pretended everything was fine. When they finally left, Elara felt like she could breathe again. "We did it," she said in the carriage. "We got lucky. Don't confuse that with success yet. You're very pessimistic, you know that? I prefer realistic." The bottles went to a chemist in London, someone Adrian trusted completely. The analysis took 3 days. When the results came back, Elara felt vindication surge through her. "Arsenic," she read aloud, "in both bottles, small doses, enough to cause illness over time, but not immediately fatal." "That's how he did it," Adrian said grimly. "Slow poison. Made it look like natural illness. We have him. This is proof. It's evidence. But we still need to tie it to him directly. He could claim someone planted it, or that he didn't know what was in the bottles. Then we use Mrs. Fletcher's testimony, the footman's, the pattern, all of it together." Adrian nodded slowly. "We take it to someone who can't be bought, someone outside Vane's influence." "Who?" "London, the Crown Prosecutor's office. If we present this properly, they'll have to investigate." They prepared their case meticulously. Statements from witnesses, the chemical analysis, documentation of the fire, everything assembled into an undeniable pattern. The day they presented it to the Crown Prosecutor, Elara's hands shook. The man, Lord Chancellor Pemberton, read through everything with a stone face. Finally, he looked up. "This is damning," he said. "If true." "It is true," Elara said. "Every word." "You understand what you're asking? To bring charges against a peer? The scandal alone will pale in comparison to the scandal of letting a murderer walk free," Adrian finished. "We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for justice." Pemberton was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I'll open a formal investigation. Lord Vane will be questioned. If your evidence holds, and I believe it will, he'll be arrested and tried." It was more than Elara had dared hope for. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank me yet. This will get ugly. Vane has allies, resources. He'll fight this with everything he has." "Let him," Adrian said coldly. "We're ready." The arrest happened 3 days later. Vane was taken into custody at his London residence. The news spread through society like wildfire. The reactions were immediate and polarized. Some people were shocked. Others claimed they'd always suspected. A few defended Vane loudly, calling the charges baseless persecution. But the evidence was too strong to ignore. The trial was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, something unexpected happened. Other women came forward, widows, sisters of men who'd crossed Vane. They'd been too afraid to speak before, but now, with the case public, with the Duke of Blackthorn backing the prosecution, they found their voices. Stories of threats, harassment, violence barely disguised as accidents. A pattern even more extensive than Elara had imagined. "He's done this for decades," she said, reading through the new statements. "How did no one stop him before?" Money, power, fear. Adrian looked at the stack of papers. People like Vane don't get stopped until someone with equal power decides to fight back. And no one did, until now. "Until us," Elara corrected. He looked at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Until you. I would have dismissed those tenants you mentioned at the ball. Would have kept my comfortable distance from the ugly realities of my estates. You made me look, made me see. I called you a coward. You were right to. And now?" Adrian was quiet for a moment. "Now I'm trying to be better, trying to deserve the second chance you gave me. I didn't give you anything. We made a deal. It was more than that. You know it was." Elara did know. Somewhere between the fake engagement and the real wedding, between the fire and the investigation, something had shifted. They weren't strangers anymore. Weren't just playing roles. They were partners, allies, maybe more. But she wasn't ready to examine that too closely. Not yet. The night before the trial, Catherine appeared at Blackthorn Manor. Elara found her in the drawing room with Adrian, their voices raised. "Completely reckless," Catherine was saying. "Do you understand what you've risked? Your reputation, the family name." "I've risked exactly what was necessary to stop a murderer," Adrian shot back. "You've made an enemy of half the peerage. Vane has allies who will never forgive this." "Good. Let them hate me. At least I'll be able to sleep at night." Catherine's expression crumbled slightly. "I'm afraid for you. both of you. Vane is dangerous, and even if he's convicted, his supporters will do what? Elara stepped into the room. Try to destroy us? They already have. We've survived worse. Catherine turned to her, and for the first time, Elara saw something other than judgment in her eyes. You've changed him, Catherine said quietly. My son. He was always dutiful but distant, safe. You've made him dangerous. Is that a compliment or an accusation? I haven't decided yet. Catherine's mouth twitched. But I suppose I should thank you for making him care about something beyond propriety and profit. It was as close to approval as Elara was likely to get. The trial starts tomorrow, Adrian said. Will you be there? Catherine nodded. Someone needs to represent the family properly, and I suspect you'll need all the support you can get. After she left, Adrian found Elara on the terrace. That went better than expected, he said. Your mother called me dangerous. She meant it as a compliment. Did she? Adrian leaned against the railing beside her. My mother respects strength. You've shown her that. More than I ever did. I just did what needed doing. That's exactly what she respects. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Whatever happens tomorrow, Elara said finally, thank you for believing me, for helping, for all of it. You don't need to thank me. This is... He stopped, searching for words. This is who I should have been all along. You just reminded me. Elara turned to look at him, really look at him. The arrogant duke who'd humiliated her at the ball was gone. Or maybe he'd never really existed. Maybe he'd always been this man, complicated, flawed, trying, just like her. We make a good team, she said softly. We do. Their eyes met, held. For a moment, Elara thought he might kiss her. Really kiss her. Not for show, not for appearances. But he didn't. Instead, he took her hand and squeezed it gently. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow changes everything. He was right. The trial opened with the courtroom packed. Society had turned out in force, some supporting Vane, others hungry for scandal, all of them watching. The prosecution presented its case methodically. Mrs. Fletcher's testimony about Caroline's death, the footman's account of Elizabeth's poisoning, the chemical analysis of the bottles, the pattern of violence and intimidation spanning decades. Vane's lawyers fought back hard. They attacked the witnesses' credibility. They suggested the bottles were planted. They painted Vane as a victim of a vindictive duke with a personal grudge. But the evidence was too strong, too consistent. On the third day, something broke. One of Vane's former associates, a man named Wallace, who'd been complicit in covering up previous incidents, suddenly changed his testimony. I can't do this anymore, he said from the witness stand, his voice shaking. I've been lying for Lord Vane for years, helping him hide things, destroy evidence. I thought I was protecting myself, but I'm just making it worse. The courtroom erupted. Wallace confessed to everything. The bribes paid to magistrates. The servants threatened into silence. The accidents that weren't accidents. By the time he finished, Vane's face was white with fury. The judge called for order. That night, back at Blackthorn Manor, Elara collapsed into a chair. We did it, she said, still not quite believing it. We actually did it. The jury hasn't deliberated yet, Adrian cautioned. They will. You saw Wallace's testimony. Vane is finished. Adrian sat beside her, his expression weary but satisfied. You were right. About all of it. About me. About him. About fighting back. We were both right. You could have walked away. Let me face this alone, but you didn't. No, he agreed. I didn't. The verdict came 2 days later, guilty. On all charges. Vane would hang within the month. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Vane's supporters screamed injustice. His victims wept with relief. Elara sat frozen, unable to process that it was really over. Adrian's hand found hers, warm and steady. It's done, he said quietly. He can't hurt anyone else. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them. Questions flew from every direction. Adrian raised his hand for silence. Justice has been served, he said simply. That's all that matters. But as they climbed into their carriage, Elara saw something in his face, not triumph, but relief mixed with exhaustion. You all right? She asked. I will be, eventually. He looked at her. What about you? Elara thought about everything they'd been through. The fake engagement, the real marriage, the fire, the investigation, the trial. "I'm better than all right," she said. "I'm free." And for the first time since this whole thing started, she actually believed it. Freedom felt strange. Elara stood in the Blackthorn Library 3 days after the verdict, staring at estate ledgers she'd asked Thomas to bring her. Numbers that represented lives, tenant families, workers, the people Adrian had mentioned but never really seen, until she'd forced him to look. "You're actually reading those?" Adrian's voice came from the doorway. Elara didn't turn around. "You said I'd have full access. I'm taking you up on it." He crossed the room looking over her shoulder. "That's the northern property, the one where the evictions happened." "I know. The rents are still too high. Even with the reductions you made, most families are barely scraping by." "I lowered them by 15%. It's not enough." Elara turned to face him. "Look at this family, the Mitchells. 5 children, both parents working your land. They're paying 70% of their income in rent. That's not sustainable." Adrian frowned, taking the ledger from her. He studied the numbers in silence. "Thomas assured me the new rates were fair market value." "Fair to who? The estate? What about fair to the people actually living there? If we lower rents too much, the property becomes unprofitable. Then we can't maintain roads, buildings, infrastructure. Then maybe profit shouldn't be the only consideration." They'd had versions of this argument 3 times already. Each time Adrian listened, pushed back, listened again. It was progress. Slow, frustrating progress. "What do you suggest?" he asked finally. "A graduated system. Base rent on income rather than flat rates. Families struggling get relief. Those doing better pay slightly more. It balances out." "That's complicated. The accounting alone is worth it if it means people can actually afford to live." Elara crossed her arms. "You asked me to help fix this. I'm helping. Are you listening or just being polite?" Adrian set down the ledger. "I'm listening, and you're right, again. I usually am." His mouth twitched. "Your humility is inspiring." "I learned from the best." They were interrupted by a knock. Beth appeared, looking flustered. "Your Grace, there are visitors, several of them. They're asking for both you and the Duke." "Who?" Elara asked. "Tenants, from the northern property. They say they need to speak with you urgently." Adrian and Elara exchanged glances. "Show them to the drawing room," Adrian said. "We'll be right there." 8 people waited in the drawing room. Men and women ranging from their 20s to 60s, all wearing their best clothes, which weren't very good. They stood clustered together, looking uncomfortable in the grand space. A man in his 40s stepped forward when Elara and Adrian entered. "Your Grace! Your Grace!" He nodded awkwardly to each of them. "I'm Thomas Mitchell. We've come to... Well, we heard about what you did with Lord Vane, and we thought..." He faltered. An older woman beside him took over. "We thought you should know it matters. What you did. Standing up to someone powerful like that, risking everything to expose the truth. We're not important people," Mitchell continued, "but we wanted to thank you, both of you, for showing that justice isn't just for the wealthy." Elara felt something catch in her throat. "You didn't need to come all this way." "Yes, we did," a younger woman said, "because what you did gives us hope. That maybe things can change. That maybe people like us matter." Adrian looked uncomfortable with the praise. "I appreciate your words, but Miss Whitcombe, the Duchess, she's the one who pushed for change. I was simply..." "You listened," the older woman interrupted. "That's more than most in your position do. My daughter worked for Lord Vane once. He dismissed her when she refused his advances. No explanation, no recourse. She had no voice. But you gave voices to people who'd been silenced. That matters more than you know." After they left, Elara sat down heavily in the nearest chair. "That was unexpected," Adrian finished, "and humbling. They traveled 3 days to say thank you, because what we did mattered to them, personally." He was quiet for a moment. "I never thought about that, how decisions made in rooms like this affect actual lives, real people. That's because you were insulated from consequences. Most people in your position are." "Were. Past tense." Adrian looked at her. "You've made it impossible to stay insulated. I see them now. The people affected by decisions I make, I can't unsee that." "Good. You shouldn't." He smiled slightly. "You're very demanding, you know." "You married me." Too late to complain now. The word married hung between them, heavy with implications they'd been avoiding. About that, Adrian said carefully, we should probably discuss what happens next. Elara's stomach tightened. What do you mean? The arrangement. The original plan was to end the engagement once your family's debts were settled and Vane was no longer a threat. Both conditions are met now. They are. So we need to decide. He stopped, running a hand through his hair. What we want this to be. It was the conversation Elara had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. What do you want it to be? She asked quietly. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. I don't know. 6 weeks ago, I would have said this was temporary, convenient, a solution to a problem. And now? Now it's not convenient at all. You challenge everything I do, question my decisions, force me to examine beliefs I've held my entire life. You're exhausting and frustrating and absolutely relentless. Elara's throat felt tight. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement. I'm not finished. Adrian stepped closer. You're also the most courageous person I've ever met. You stood up to me when no one else would. You risked everything to expose a murderer. You see people, really see them, in a way I never learned to. And somewhere in the last 6 weeks, you've become the person I trust most in the world. Adrian, I don't want this to end. The arrangement, the marriage, whatever we're calling it. I want it to be real. Completely real. If you'll have me. Elara's heart was hammering. You're asking me to stay married to you? Actually married? I'm asking if you could imagine a future where we're partners. Not because we have to be, but because we choose to be. I know I'm not easy. I'm stubborn and proud and terrible at expressing feelings, but I'm trying to be better. And I hope, you make me better. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. I need to know something first, Elara said. Is this guilt? Are you doing this because you feel responsible for what happened at the ball? No. This is me realizing that the woman I humiliated at that ball is the same woman who saved me from becoming exactly the kind of man I despised. This is me choosing you, not out of obligation, out of respect. And he hesitated. And something that feels very much like love, though I'm terrible at recognizing it. Elara felt tears prick her eyes. You really are terrible at expressing feelings. I know. Will you teach me? She laughed, the sound wet and shaky. That depends. Are you actually willing to learn? I've been learning since the moment you called me a coward. I don't plan to stop now. Elara crossed the distance between them, taking his hands. I don't want easy. I don't want perfect. I want real, messy and complicated and honest. I can do messy and complicated. Honest, I'm still working on. Then work on it. With me. As your wife. Your actual wife. Adrian pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. Are you sure? Because once you commit to this, to me, I'm not letting you go. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. He kissed her then. Not for show. Not for appearances. Just them. Finally honest about what they'd become to each other. When they pulled apart, Adrian was smiling, a real smile that transformed his entire face. My mother is going to be insufferable about this, he said. Your mother already thinks she orchestrated our entire relationship. She'll take credit anyway. Let her. We know the truth. The reconstruction of the East Wing took 2 months. Elara oversaw it personally, working with architects and builders to create something better than what had burned. More windows, better ventilation, rooms designed for comfort rather than just display. Margaret moved back in once it was finished, still shaken, but recovering. You've done well, she told Elara one afternoon as they walked through the new hallway. The Duke is a good man. I knew it from the start. Elara didn't correct her. Let her mother believe in the fairy tale version. The truth was complicated enough without explaining all of it. He's trying, Elara said instead. We both are. That's all marriage is, darling. 2 people trying. Some days you succeed, some days you fail, but you keep trying. It was the wisest thing her mother had said in months. The estate reforms took longer. Adrian fought Elara on nearly every change, not because he disagreed, but because centuries of tradition didn't reverse easily. If we implement graduated rents, other estates will see it as weakness, he argued one evening, papers spread between them on the study floor. They'd taken to working there. It felt less formal than the desk. Let them, Elara said. We're not doing this for their approval. We're also not doing it in a vacuum. If every other estate keeps raising rents while we lower ours, we'll be seen as fools. Or as leaders. That's optimistic. Someone needs to be. You're pessimistic enough for both of us. Adrian sighed, making a note in the margin. Fine. We implement the graduated system, but we document everything. If it fails, I reserve the right to say, I told you so. If it fails, I'll help you fix it. It didn't fail. Within 6 months, productivity on the Blackthorn estates increased. Tenant satisfaction rose. Workers stopped leaving for other opportunities because conditions at Blackthorn had become better than anywhere else. Other estates started asking questions. Lord Pemberton, the same man who'd insulted Elara at the garden party, showed up one afternoon requesting a meeting. I've been reviewing my own properties, he said, looking uncomfortable. The numbers don't lie. Your reforms are working. I wanted to understand how. Adrian glanced at Elara. She nodded slightly. My wife implemented them, Adrian said. She can explain better than I can. Pemberton's eyebrows rose. Your wife? Is the Duchess of Blackthorn, Elara said evenly. And yes, I manage estate policy. Is that a problem? No problem. I'm simply surprised. You questioned my ability to handle responsibility once. I'm proving you wrong. To his credit, Pemberton had the grace to look ashamed. You are. And I apologize for my earlier comments. They were inappropriate. They were insulting, but apology accepted. Elara spent the next 2 hours walking Pemberton through the reforms. By the time he left, he'd taken enough notes to fill a small book. That felt good, Elara said after he'd gone. Watching you make Pemberton squirm. Absolutely. Not that. Well, partly that. But mostly proving that change is possible. That doing the right thing doesn't have to mean sacrificing everything. Adrian pulled her into his arms. You're changing more than just this estate. You're changing how people think about responsibility, legacy, what power is actually for. We're changing it, together. Together, he agreed. Catherine's approval came grudgingly but sincerely. She visited one afternoon ostensibly to discuss family business. But Elara caught her watching the estate operations with something that looked like pride. You've done well, Catherine said over tea. Both of you. Thank you, Elara said, genuinely surprised. I was wrong about you. I thought you were using my son. I didn't see that you were exactly what he needed, someone who wouldn't let him hide from hard truths. I think we needed each other, Elara said carefully. I was drowning. He threw me a line. I pulled us both up. Catherine's mouth curved into a small smile. That's a much better metaphor than I expected from you. I'm full of surprises. Yes, you are. Catherine set down her teacup. The family, the entire family, approves of this match now, officially. I wanted you to know. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. Thank you, Elara said quietly. Don't thank me. You earned it, both the approval and the title. Catherine stood. Now use them. Change things. Make us better than we've been. After she left, Adrian appeared in the doorway. Did my mother just give you her blessing? I think she did. That's terrifying. She never approves of anyone. Maybe she just needed to see that I wasn't going to let you become complacent. You've succeeded there. I haven't been complacent since the moment you called me a coward. Elara smiled. Good. Don't start now. The 1-year anniversary of their wedding fell on a cold November day. They marked it quietly. No grand celebration, just the two of them, and a private dinner. A year ago, I thought this was temporary, Elara said, holding her wine glass. A necessary arrangement that would end as soon as possible. And now? Now I can't imagine it ending. Ever. Adrian reached across the table, taking her hand. Neither can I. You've become... He stopped, searching for words. Everything. Partner. Conscience. The person I want beside me for whatever comes next. That's almost romantic. I'm trying. I know. It's one of the things I love about you. The word love still felt new. They danced around it for months before finally saying it, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. I love you too, Adrian said, even when you're being insufferable about estate management. Especially then. He laughed. Yes, especially then. They spent the rest of the evening talking about everything and nothing. Plans for the estate, Margaret's recovery, the social season approaching, small domestic things that would have bored Elara senseless a year ago. Now they felt like home. The next morning a letter arrived. Elara recognized the handwriting immediately. Mrs. Fletcher, the housekeeper who'd testified against Vane. Dear Your Grace, I wanted to write and tell you that I've found new employment. Thanks to your recommendation, I'm now working for the Earl of Westbrook. The position is good, the pay is fair, and for the first time in years, I can sleep without fear. More importantly, I wanted you to know what your courage meant. By standing up to Lord Vane, you showed that justice is possible, that powerful men can be held accountable, that our voices, servant voices, matter. I'm not the only one who feels this way. Other women who testified have written to me. They're rebuilding their lives too. We're all grateful. You changed more than just your own circumstances. You changed ours too. With deepest respect, Helen Fletcher. Elara read it twice, her vision blurring. What is it? Adrian asked. She handed him the letter without speaking. He read it, his expression softening. You did this, gave her hope. We did it. You backed the prosecution. You provided resources. After you pushed me too. Don't diminish your role in this. Elara folded the letter carefully. I just wanted to survive. I didn't set out to change anything. That's what makes it matter more. You weren't trying to be heroic. You were trying to be free. And in fighting for your freedom, you gave others theirs too. It was true and overwhelming. What do we do with that? Elara asked quietly. With the knowledge that our choices affected so many lives? We keep choosing well, keep fighting for what's right, keep being better than we were yesterday. That's a lot of responsibility. Yes, but we don't carry it alone. Adrian pulled her close. We have each other. We have people who believe in what we're doing. That's more than most people get. Elara leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her ear. He was right. They had each other. And that was enough. 6 months later, Elara stood in front of the House of Lords. She wasn't supposed to be there. Women weren't allowed in the chamber during sessions. But Adrian had arranged for her to observe from the gallery, a small rebellion that irritated traditionalists and delighted reformers. He was speaking about estate reform, proposing legislation that would protect tenant rights, limit rent increases, provide recourse for families facing eviction. These changes aren't radical, Adrian was saying. They're practical, humane. We've implemented them on Blackthorn properties with measurable success. Productivity is up. Worker satisfaction is up. Profit, yes, profit is up. Treating people fairly isn't just moral, it's economically sound. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some approving, many skeptical. This is idealistic nonsense, Lord Ashford interrupted. You're proposing we cripple our own estates for the sake of sentiment. I'm proposing we recognize that our estates run on people, not property, and people perform better when they're treated with dignity. Adrian's voice was sharp. If that's idealistic, so be it. I'd rather be idealistic than complicit in systematic exploitation. The debate raged for 2 hours. In the end, the proposal didn't pass. Too many entrenched interests, too much resistance to change. But it planted seeds. Several lords approached Adrian afterward, asking questions, requesting data, considering implementation on their own estates. That went better than expected, Adrian said on the carriage ride home. It failed, Elara pointed out. This time. But the conversation started. That's how change happens. Slowly, frustratingly, incrementally. You sound like me now. I learned from the best. Elara smiled, squeezing his hand. You did well. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of us. They arrived home to find Margaret waiting with news. There's a young woman here to see you, she said. She's been waiting for over an hour. Refused to leave until you returned. The woman was in her early 20s, thin and nervous. She stood when Elara and Adrian entered, wringing her hands. Your Grace, she curtsied awkwardly. I'm sorry to impose, but I didn't know where else to go. What's your name? Elara asked gently. Sarah Thornton. My aunt was Caroline Thornton, before she married Lord Vane. The room went still. You're Caroline's niece, Adrian said. Yes, I was only 12 when she died, too young to understand what happened, but I've been following the trial, the news, everything you uncovered. Sarah's voice shook. I wanted to thank you for giving my aunt justice, for making sure people knew the truth. Elara crossed the room, taking Sarah's hands. I'm so sorry for your loss. It's been years, but it still hurts. Knowing she was murdered, knowing he got away with it for so long. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. But you stopped him. You made sure he couldn't hurt anyone else. That matters more than you know. They talked for an hour. Sarah shared memories of Caroline, bright, kind, trapped in a marriage she couldn't escape. The family's suspicions that had gone nowhere. The helplessness of watching justice fail. When she finally left, Elara felt emotionally wrung out. This is what we did, she said to Adrian. We gave closure to families who'd been grieving without answers. You gave them that. Your courage. Your refusal to accept Vane's version of events. Our courage, Elara corrected. Our refusal. Stop diminishing your part in this. Adrian pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. We're quite the team, aren't we? The best. That night, lying in bed with Adrian's arms around her, Elara thought about the journey that had brought them here. A year and a half ago, she'd been desperate, broke, socially ruined, facing a future that offered nothing but darkness. Now she was the Duchess of Blackthorn, a voice for reform, a partner in marriage and purpose to a man she'd once thought she hated. What are you thinking about? Adrian murmured against her hair. How far we've come. How different everything is. Better or worse? Infinitely better. Terrifyingly better. Terrifying? Because I'm happy, and happiness feels fragile, like it could disappear at any moment. Adrian shifted, turning her to face him. It won't disappear, not unless we let it, and I have no intention of letting it. Promise? I promise. You're stuck with me. For better or worse. Wasn't that in the vows? It was, though I wasn't paying much attention at the time. I was too busy panicking. So was I. He kissed her forehead. But we figured it out. We always do. Elara settled back against him, feeling safe and loved and terrifyingly happy. What comes next? She asked. Whatever we want. More reforms, more fights with Parliament. Maybe children, eventually, if you want them. The word children sent a flutter through Elara's chest. I might, someday, when we're ready. No rush. We have time. They did have time, years stretching ahead of them, challenges to face, changes to make, but they'd face them together, and that made everything possible. The spring social season brought unexpected vindication. Society, the same society that had shunned Elara after the ball, now celebrated her. Invitations flooded Blackthorn Manor. Everyone wanted the Duchess who'd taken down a murderer. It's nauseating, Elara said, sorting through yet another stack of requests. Half these people called me a social climber 6 months ago. And now they're climbing over each other to associate with you, Adrian said. Welcome to aristocratic hypocrisy. Should we attend any of these? We should attend strategically, use the access to promote reforms, change minds. You've gotten very calculating. I learned from my wife. They attended select events, choosing carefully. Each appearance became an opportunity to discuss estate management, tenant rights, social reform. Some people listened. Others dismissed them as radicals. But slowly, incrementally, attitudes shifted. The night of the Ashford Summer Ball, exactly 2 years after Elara had first challenged Adrian, they arrived together to a very different reception. People parted for them, whispered admiringly rather than cruelly, sought their opinions rather than their humiliation. This is surreal, Elara murmured as they crossed the ballroom floor. This is what happens when you refuse to be silenced, Adrian said. You become impossible to ignore. Lady Ashford herself approached, all smiles. Your Grace, Your Grace. How wonderful to see you both. We're so honored you could attend. The same woman who'd questioned Elara's suitability now fawned over her. Thank you for having us, Elara said graciously. After Lady Ashford moved on, Adrian leaned close. You could remind her how she treated you at the garden party. I could, but what would that accomplish? Satisfaction? Temporary satisfaction. I'd rather use this position to actually help people than waste time on petty revenge. Adrian smiled. When did you become so wise? Around the time I married an arrogant duke and had to train him properly. Train? I prefer educated. Call it whatever helps you sleep at night. They danced 3 times that evening. Not for show, not for appearances, just because they wanted to. During the 3rd dance, Adrian pulled her closer than propriety strictly allowed. People are watching, Elara warned. Let them. They should see what a real marriage looks like. Scandalous and inappropriate? Happy, honest, real. Elara rested her head against his shoulder, not caring who saw. I love you. I love you too. Even when you're being impossible about estate policy. Especially then. Yes, Adrian agreed. Especially then. The summer passed in a blur of reforms, social obligations, and quiet moments stolen between responsibilities. Margaret's health improved steadily. She'd started volunteering at a local charity, working with families displaced by economic hardship. I want to help, she told Elara one afternoon. The way you and Adrian helped us. Give back somehow. It was the first time her mother had acknowledged how dire their situation had been. I think that's wonderful, Elara said. I'm proud of you, darling. What you've become, what you've accomplished. I know I wasn't much help during the difficult times. You were grieving for father, for our old life. That's not weakness. It is when your daughter is fighting for survival and you're too lost in the past to notice. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. But you survived anyway. You thrived, and you did it without me. Elara hugged her mother tightly. I did it because of you, because I couldn't let you lose everything. That was my motivation, always. And now look at you, a duchess, a reformer, changing society from the inside. I'm just doing what needs doing. That's exactly what makes it extraordinary. In August, the estate reforms passed their 1-year review with remarkable results. Tenant retention was at an all-time high. Productivity had increased 23%. Worker satisfaction surveys, a new innovation Elara had insisted on, showed overwhelming approval. Adrian presented the findings to a parliamentary committee, with Elara watching from the gallery. This time the proposal passed. Not unanimously, not without fight. But it passed. And suddenly, tenant protections weren't just a blackthorn policy. They were law. Elara cried when she heard the final vote count. Adrian found her in the gallery afterward, his own eyes suspiciously bright. We did it, he said. You did it. You convinced them. I presented data you collected, arguments you developed. This was always your victory. Ours, Elara insisted. Always ours. They walked through London together that evening, anonymous among the crowds. Do you ever regret it? Adrian asked. The path we took to get here, the lies we told? Elara considered. I regret that we had to lie, that the system forced us into that position. But I don't regret the result. We found each other. We changed things. That matters more than the messy path we took. Even the humiliation, the fire, all of it? Even all of it, because it brought us here. Adrian stopped, pulling her close despite the people flowing around them. I was a coward when we met. Comfortable, complacent. You made me braver. You were never a coward, just unconscious. I woke you up. Violently. Was there another way? Probably not. He kissed her softly. Thank you for not letting me stay asleep. Thank you for waking up. They made it home after dark, tired but content. The next morning brought another letter, this one from the Crown Prosecutor's Office. Your Grace, following the passage of the Tenant Protection Act, several families have come forward requesting assistance with grievances against their landlords. Many cited your work on the Blackthorn estates as inspiration. Would you consider serving on an advisory board to help implement these new protections? Your experience would be invaluable. Elara read it 3 times, her hands shaking. They want me to advise the government, she said, showing Adrian the letter. Of course they do. You wrote half the policy. I'm not qualified. You're more qualified than anyone. You lived the struggle. You implemented solutions. You proved they work. Who better to guide implementation? I'm a woman. Most of them won't take me seriously. Then you'll make them take you seriously, like you've done with everyone else. Elara looked at the letter again, fear and excitement warring in her chest. This is huge, she said quietly. It's what you deserve. Recognition for the work you've done. What if I fail? Then you'll figure out why, fix it, and try again, like you always do. His confidence in her was both terrifying and empowering. All right, Elara said. I'll do it. Adrian pulled her into a kiss that said everything words couldn't. When they pulled apart, he was smiling. You're going to change the world. We're going to change the world, Elara corrected. Together. Together, Adrian agreed. Always together. The autumn brought new challenges and new opportunities. Elara's advisory board work consumed hours each week. Meetings with officials, reviews of implementation plans, consultations with families affected by the new laws. It was exhausting. It was also the most meaningful work she'd ever done. You're making a difference, Adrian told her one evening when she came home frustrated by bureaucratic obstruction. Real, measurable difference. It's so slow, and half these officials are actively resisting because you're threatening their comfortable status quo. That means you're doing it right. Elara collapsed onto the sofa beside him. I just want to help people. Why is that so complicated? Because help requires change, and change is always complicated. He pulled her against him. But you're not doing it alone. You have support, resources, me. You're very useful. I try. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire. Do you ever think about where we'd be if I hadn't challenged you at that ball? Elara asked. Frequently. I'd probably still be that arrogant duke, ignoring problems and counting profits. You'd probably be... He stopped. Married to Vane. If I was lucky enough to survive the wedding, the thought still made Adrian's jaw tighten. I refuse to imagine that timeline. This is the one that matters. The one where you survived, where we found each other, where we're changing things. This is the one where we're happy, Elara added softly. Yes, this one. 2 years after their wedding, on a cold December evening, Adrian called Elara to his study. She found him standing by the window holding something small. What is it? She asked. He turned, opening his hand. A ring. Simple. Elegant. A single sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. It's not an engagement ring, Adrian said. Obviously, since we're already married. But I realized I never gave you a choice about any of this. The engagement was fake. The marriage was strategic. You never got the romance, the courtship, the moment where you decided you wanted this. Adrian, let me finish. He took her hand. I'm not asking you to marry me. We're already married. But I'm asking you to choose it, consciously, deliberately. Not because you had to, but because you want to. Will you? Elara felt tears spill down her cheeks. You already know my answer. I want to hear it anyway. Yes. 1,000 times, yes. I choose you. I choose this. I choose us. Every day. Forever. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Forever, he repeated. I like the sound of that. They held each other as snow began to fall outside, soft and silent. 2 years ago, Elara had been broken, desperate, fighting for survival. Now she was whole, powerful, fighting for change. The journey hadn't been smooth or easy or anything like what she'd imagined, but it had been theirs, and that made it perfect. The spring of their 3rd year together brought the final piece of closure. Sir Edmund Hartley, the magistrate who'd covered up Vane's crimes, was arrested on corruption charges. The investigation revealed decades of misconduct, bribes, and obstruction of justice. Justice for Caroline, for Elizabeth, for everyone he betrayed, Elara said, reading the news. It won't bring them back, Adrian said quietly. No, but it proves that accountability is possible, even for people who thought they were untouchable. The trial was swift. Hartley was convicted and stripped of his position. In the aftermath, several other cases he'd mishandled were reopened. Families got answers they'd been denied for years. This is your legacy, Adrian told Elara. Real, lasting change. Our legacy, she corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. We make a good team. The best. That evening, they hosted a small dinner. Margaret, Catherine, Uncle Richard, Thomas Graves, and his family. The people who'd supported them through everything. A toast, Richard said, raising his glass. To Adrian and Elara, who proved that courage and conviction can change the world. To change, everyone echoed. Later, alone on the terrace, Adrian pulled Elara close. Do you remember what you said to me at that ball? The first night we met? I called you a coward hiding behind wealth and privilege. You did, and you were absolutely right. I was hiding from responsibility, from truth, from anything that might disturb my comfortable existence. And now? Now I'm standing in the light, fighting for what matters. Because of you. Elara rested her head against his chest. You would have found your way eventually. Maybe, but you shortened the journey, gave me a reason to be better. You gave me a reason to be brave. They stood together, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. What comes next? Adrian asked. Whatever we choose. More reforms, more fights, maybe those children we talked about. I'd like that. Building a family, creating something lasting. With you, anything is possible. Adrian kissed the top of her head. I love you. Completely. Impossibly. Forever. I love you too, my impossible, infuriating, wonderful husband. Your Grace, he corrected with a smile. My Adrian, Elara insisted. And in that moment, wrapped in his arms, Elara understood something fundamental. She hadn't just survived, she'd won, not by defeating enemies or claiming power, but by choosing to fight when fighting seemed impossible, by refusing to accept the world as it was and daring to imagine it as it could be, by finding a partner who chose to fight beside her. Together, they'd changed more than laws or estate policies. They'd changed themselves. And in doing so, they'd proven that real strength wasn't about power or privilege. It was about the courage to stand up, to speak truth, to demand better, and to never, ever accept cowardice in yourself or anyone else. The night was cold, but Elara felt warm, safe, loved, free, and that was worth every battle they'd fought to get here.